So in the first section, proteins part 1, we looked at proteins in general, their structure, that they're made up of amino acids, how the structure forms, and how we denature and break them apart. Then we talked about all the functions of protein and looked at the digestion of protein, finding that we end up with amino acids, and those are sent out in the bloodstream to the liver and the other cells. So now we'll take a look at proteins in the body and also see some of the effects of health and how much we need in some of those different things. So this is a preview of protein metabolism. We'll learn more detail in the next week or so when we discuss Chapter 7. Cells have several metabolic options depending on their protein and energy needs. When proteins break down, they free up amino acids. So these amino acids mix with amino acids from dietary protein to form an amino acid pool within the cells and the circulating blood. The rate of protein degradation or breakdown and the amount of protein intake in our diet may vary, but the pattern of amino acids within the pool remains fairly constant, regardless of their source, whether it's coming from proteins being broken down or if it's coming from protein in the diet. Any of these amino acids can be used to make body proteins or other nitrogen-containing compounds, or they can be stripped of their nitrogen and used for energy, either immediately or stored as fat for later use. So this is kind of what becomes the amino acid pool. All of those amino acids available for the cells to use. And here's a look at that. So up here we have amino acids from dietary protein. So we're eating protein, digesting it down to amino acids, sending it out in the blood to the cells for cells to use to build new body protein. And then as we build body protein, that's the hormones, enzymes, antibodies, blood proteins, all those different things that we've talked about. As we're building body protein, at the same time body protein is being broken down or degraded, and that is freeing up those amino acids again out in the bloodstream, making them available for cells to use. So this process here is known as that amino acid pool. And then we see that sometimes, as mentioned before, we could take the structure of amino acids to synthesize non-protein molecules. Okay? And in this process, we're having to remove that nitrogen group. So this shows us the removal of that NH2, the amino nitrogen-containing group, is sent to the liver because we have to deal with that amino nitrogen group. The amino group, the NH2, we find the next few slides becomes ammonia, which is converted to urea. Urea is sent out in the blood to the kidneys. They filter the blood, they filter out the urea, send it to the bladder to be excreted in the urine. And then we have the carbon skeleton structure left of the amino acid now that we removed the amino nitrogen group, and this can be used to produce fatty acids to store to be used later as energy. We can make glucose, gluconeogenesis, making glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, and or use this here used for immediate energy. So let's look at nitrogen excretion. When amino acids are broken down, as occurs if they're used for energy or to make glucose or fat, they must first be deaminated or stripped of their nitrogen-containing amino group. This nitrogen-containing compound must then be disposed of in a safe way. Okay. So when we're talking about deamination, it is cleaving, breaking that bond, so this NH2 amino group is released, and then the rest of the carbon skeleton structure can be used to make glucose, make fat, or used for immediate energy. So with this process of nitrogen excretion, deamination occurs. We have the NH2, the amino group, but it's fairly unstable. Okay? In order for it to come off the amino acid, another hydrogen is added to form ammonia, so it becomes NH3, which is highly toxic, and bottled cleaning solutions contain strong smells of ammonia. It's excreted from the cells and travels to the liver via the bloodstream. Okay? Because ammonia is a base, the blood's acid-base balance becomes upset if the cells produce large quantity or larger quantities than the liver can handle. Okay? In the liver, ammonia combines with CO2 to make urea, which is a less toxic compound, and releases water in the process. Then the liver cells secrete urea into the blood, where it circulates until it passes through the kidneys, which filter the urea out of the blood, and the urea ends up in the bladder with the rest of the filter substances out of the blood, where it can be excreted in the urine. So that is how our body deals with that nitrogen compound of the amino acids. If we're using them for energy or to make glucose, we have to deaminate them, and in that process, this is how the body deals with that nitrogen group, and it ends up as urea excreted in the urine. From your book, here's a slide that just shows that process in the liver. The NH3 groups arrive in the liver. The carbon dioxide together forms a compound called urea, and also water is formed in that process. And here we looked at before just the process of amino acids becoming deaminated. The nitrogen ammonia group becomes urea to the liver, from the liver to the kidneys, and then filtered to the bladder to be excreted. In your book, this is a look at that process. Excretion of excess nitrogen through deamination in the liver, and then removal through the kidneys. So now let's take a look at protein and see, how much protein do we need? We hear lots about protein, and but in our diets, what is about the amount that we need? The RDA for most adults is 0.4 grams of protein per pound of weight, because most of us know our weight in pounds, or 0.8 grams per kilogram. In general, the recommendation is set at 10 to 35% of our energy calorie intake per day should come from protein. So that would be represents around 50 to 175 grams. But a person weighing 150 pounds, the RDA is set at approximately 54 grams per day. And we'll take a look to see, 54 grams doesn't mean a lot to most of us, but in a cup of 1 cup of milk, or 8 ounces of milk, is usually from 8 to 9 grams of protein, just to give you an idea. Okay, also our protein needs can vary based on how active or not a person is. So in general, like mentioned before, the 0.4 grams per pound, but if we're a sedentary adult, so not very active, don't tend to exercise, that's the RDA, that 0.4 grams. But if you're a recreational exerciser and an adult, so going to the gym a few days a week, you go for walks, ride your bike and things like that, it increases a little to 0.5 to 0.7 grams per day. The competitive athlete, someone that is on a team that is practicing, working out, and competing throughout the week, training for triathlons, those type of things, 0.6 to 0.7 grams per pound. Growing teenage athletes need even a little bit more, because they need the protein to support growth and development, but they also need a little extra protein to promote the muscle breakdown, repairing muscle, building muscle, all those different things. So 0.7 to 0.9 grams protein per pound. And then if it's an adult and they're trying to build muscle mass, lifting weights and strength training and different things, 0.7 to 0.8 grams per pound. And this is based out of information. I went to a sports nutrition conference in Seattle a couple springs ago, and Nancy Clark, she's been involved in sports nutrition since I was in undergrad, getting my bachelor's of science in nutrition, and in the mid-90s. So she's an expert in this area of sports nutrition. So she and another doctor from the East Coast came and put on this sports nutrition conference, and these are the recommendations that they use, and they've worked with professional athletes, Olympic athletes, different professional teams, and they say that they tend to have the most benefit to the people they work with this range of grams per pound, and typically they said they don't tend to ever go over 1 gram per pound. So that's based on the information that they shared with us. Okay, so now let's take a look at protein quality. When we are talking about the quality of proteins here, we're not saying that animal proteins are better than plant sources and that everyone has to eat animal products to be healthy. It's just that since plant proteins may be missing at least one essential amino acid, we need to be aware of the protein quality. So a high quality protein, that's one that contains all the essential amino acids. Remember, there's 20 amino acids and 9 of them are essential. So in one serving of this protein food source, you're getting all of those essential amino acids, so it's high quality. And we find this mainly in the animal protein sources, so meat, fish, poultry, eggs, dairy. 2 of the plant sources that fall into this category are soy and quinoa. And then there are low quality proteins. As I mentioned, it's not saying that it's not a good type of protein, but it's just telling us it's missing 1 or more essential amino acids, and this is where most all the plant proteins fall. So they are providing us some of the essential amino acids, but not all of them. So those individuals that are following vegetarian diets must learn to pair plant foods together to make sure they're getting all the essential amino acids in their diet, because we don't want to be missing out on any of those essential amino acids. So we look at something known as complementary proteins, and the concept of complementary proteins is that by combining plant protein foods that have different but complementing amino acid patterns, and the quality of protein in one's diet is improved. And like I had mentioned, it's really important for vegetarians and vegans to take a look at this. So an example would be from the bottom of the slide. Legumes, beans, tend to be high in isoleucine and lysine, but they lack methionine and tryptophan, where grains are lacking these 2 essential amino acids, but they contain these 2. So if we pair beans and grains, then you're getting a blend or complement of all of those essential amino acids. So a common combination in certain parts of the world is rice and beans, and this combo has a complete protein profile, so you're getting all of your essential amino acids. It used to be thought that you had to combine plant proteins at every meal to get adequate protein, but they found that that's not necessarily the case. You just need to balance the plant protein sources throughout the day to make sure you're getting that blend and that you're getting enough calories. Vegetarians can receive all the amino acids they need over the course of a day by consuming a variety of whole grains, legumes, seeds, nuts, vegetables. So, rice and beans with tofu, whole wheat bread and peanut butter. Those are just a couple examples. Okay. Now we won't spend a lot of time here because we will have people presenting some information on this, but what is a vegetarian diet? Okay. Does it include meat, fish, poultry, seafood? There's lots of subcategories of vegetarian diets. Okay. Vegan diet, this is a diet where there are no animal products or byproducts at all, and the group will let us know a little bit more about that as well. Okay, so these slides I'm just going to quickly go through because we will take some time later for that group to enlighten us with all this wonderful information about vegetarian diets, and then the pros and cons of a vegetarian diet. So we will just bypass that very quickly. and come back to that a little bit later in the quarter. So let's look at protein and some of the health effects that we see with protein. And let's first look at deficiency of protein. Does this tend to be a problem in the U.S.? Yeah, not nearly as common here in the U.S. as it is in developing third world countries. But when there's a deficiency of protein, this is known as PEM, protein energy malnutrition. And due to lack of food intake, there's lack of calories, there's a deficiency in most or all vitamins and minerals as well. And like I said, most common in developing third world countries. PEM is most often found in early childhood, and it's one of the most prevalent and actually devastating forms of malnutrition in the world, affecting about out of every 4 children worldwide. So it is a serious issue. Most of the 33,000 children who die each day are malnourished, so it has large effects around the world. There are 2 forms of PEM which really are different in their clinical features. We see that kwashiorkor is the acute short-term deprivation of protein and calories, where the other form of PEM, marasmus, is more chronic, long-term deprivation of these things. Even though PEM is most prevalent in Africa, Central America, South America, Southeast Asia, we also do find populations here in the U.S. Where PEM, protein energy malnutrition, does exist. So in the elderly population, later on in the quarter, in chapter 17, we'll talk about older adult nutrition. And older adults, there are so many things that set them up for malnutrition, and so we see a higher incidence of protein energy malnutrition in the older adult population. Poor, lower socioeconomic populations around the U.S. is one, if funds are limited. A lot of times protein is the most expensive part of our diet, and so we tend to limit that, and they don't get as much protein in their diet. Anorexia, those struggling with the eating disorder, where ultimately it's more of a form of self-starvation, not allowing themselves to eat the calories or protein they need. They become very malnourished, and we see PEM in individuals that are struggling with anorexia. Cancer, a lot of patients, people that are diagnosed with cancer, if they're going through radiation or chemotherapy treatments, sometimes the side effects are nausea, vomiting. It's hard to keep food down, so that can be an issue that decreases the amount of food they eat, decreases the calories, the protein that they are getting. So malnutrition occurs within that population. AIDS, HIV positive, with the medications that the individuals take, sometimes that affects their appetite. Food safety is an issue as well. Some individuals have malabsorption syndromes and issues just with even being able to absorb the nutrients that they're eating in food, and that can lead to malnutrition. So let's take a look more specifically at marasmus and growth failure that occurs due to PEM, protein energy malnutrition. And marasmus is more of the chronic protein energy malnutrition. So let's get the information up here. Okay. Marasmus comes from the Greek word meaning dying away. Okay, it reflects a severe deprivation of food over a long time, and the person is starving and suffering from an inadequate intake of energy, so calories and protein. And this includes inadequate essential fatty acids and vitamins and minerals. Most commonly occurs in children from 6 to 18 months of age in all overpopulated and impoverished areas of the world. Children living in poverty do not have enough to eat. They rely on diluted cereal drinks that supply very few calories, and protein is lower quality and not very much protein. Such food really can barely sustain life and cannot support growth and development of children in this age range. So because of this, with marasmus, the children look a lot of times like little versions of older people, just skin and bones. And it affects brain development and learning ability. The brain normally grows to the adult size within the first 2 years. They don't have the insulation to protect them from the cold, maintaining body temperature. Growth ceases, enzymes are insufficient, GI tract lining deteriorates, so malabsorption occurs even when there is a little food eaten. So it's not completely getting no food at all. Even if they're getting a small amount, it still can occur over time. Then let's look at kwashiorkor, and this is the acute protein energy malnutrition. It reflects a sudden and recent deprivation of food. That's the acute part of it. From the Ghana word that refers to the birth position of a child and is used to describe the illness a child develops when the next child is born. So when a mother has been nursing her first child, and then she's pregnant, she continues nursing that first child. When she has the second child, she weans the first child and puts the second child on the breast for breast milk. The first child suddenly switched from more of a nutrient-dense, protein-rich breast milk to a starch, protein-poor cereal. A lot of times soon they'll become sick. And kwashiorkor, it's more acute short-term, but it can lead to death. Typically sets in between 18 months and 2 years. It develops rapidly, but may be followed by an illness such as measles or other infections. We see a loss of weight and body fat is usually not as severe in kwashiorkor as it is in marasmus. And remember how we talked about proteins in the blood, the albumin, how they help maintain fluid balance and prevent edema. The limbs and abdominal areas become more swollen with edema. Fatty liver develops due to the lack of protein carriers to transport lipids out of the liver. There's metabolic toxins that can't be cleared out of a fatty liver due to the lack of enzymes. So inflammation and infections are worse due to these toxins being in the body longer. Skin is patchy, scaly, sores don't heal, and then iron can be unbound due to the lack of protein transporters, and this contributes to illness and death as well by promoting bacterial growth and free radical damage and things. So lots of stuff going on with kwashiorkor as well, even though it's more of the acute, sudden, recent lack of food. So here's a picture of the two. There are mixes of these two with various symptoms from each. In all cases, children are likely to develop diarrhea, infections, and multiple nutrient deficiencies. And this is in your book on page 668, and it points out the differences between marasmus and kwashiorkor, looking at the age, developing slowly or rapidly, the weight loss, edema, fatty liver, some of those different things. It just points out some of the features between the two. So let's continue looking at protein and health effects. And I think in the U.S. we see more issue with excess dietary protein, getting more than we need in our diet. So let's take a look here. Many of the world's people struggle to obtain enough food, energy, so the calories and protein. It's in the developed countries like U.S., and excess of energy and protein intake are common, and the health effects are seen in a variety of ways. So if we're getting an excess of dietary protein, and a lot of the research more specifically pinpoints animal protein sources as having an effect on some of these things, but may lead to a strain on the kidneys. So with kidney disease, a high intake of protein doesn't cause kidney disease, but however, a high intake of protein increases the work of the kidneys and accelerates kidney deterioration in people that have chronic kidney disease. So restricting dietary protein may help to slow the progression of kidney disease in people who have this condition. And also, if we're eating lots and lots and lots of protein and maybe not as much carbohydrate, we are limiting the glucose that's available to brain cells and blood cells and things. So we're having to break down protein, or the amino acids, deaminate, take off that amino NH2 group, and in doing that, then the liver's producing urea. Out in the blood, the kidneys are having to consistently filter the urea to send it to the bladder to be excreted. So this process over time may cause some strain on the kidneys, so the rest of the carbon skeleton of the amino acid can be used to make glucose or used for energy. Okay, let's see. Next we have a link with excess protein and mineral losses. So when we look at mineral losses, most often we see specifically with calcium there's an effect. So when protein intake is high, calcium excretion increases. However, the ratio of calcium to protein is the important factor. And since the average calcium intake in the U.S. tends to be low and the protein intake tends to be high, especially among young women, the calcium losses may be significant enough to affect bone health. And they're doing studies and research to see how protein and calcium, the ratio is affecting each other. So the problem may not be too much protein, but it could be there's too little calcium. But we do know in general, when protein intake is high, calcium excretion increases. Okay, increased risk of obesity. Including some protein in each meal may help with weight loss by providing satiety, so you don't feel the need to eat. It prolongs that time from one meal to the next. Okay, but however, selecting too many protein-rich foods may crowd out fruits, veggies, whole grains, making the diet inadequate in other nutrients. And also, if you're choosing animal protein sources that are high in saturated fat and cholesterol, the extra high amount of saturated fat can increase calories and possibly could increase the risk of obesity as well. Increased risk of heart disease. A high protein diet may increase the risk of heart disease, partially because animal protein tends to be high in saturated fats and cholesterol. However, the exact link between a diet high in saturated fats and an increase in heart disease are not totally understood by researchers, and there's lots of studies going on continuing to look at the links between saturated fats and heart health and cholesterol and all those things. They do relate to homocysteine levels, as was mentioned in our discussion of lipids and heart disease. So there's some maybe possible link there. Increased risk of cancer. Evidence suggests a strong correlation between high intakes of red meat and processed meat with colon cancer. So the studies have looked more specifically at colon cancer and the common U.S. Western diet. We tend to eat a lot of red meat and processed meats. Okay, let's look at protein abundance. So most people in the U.S. and Canada receive more protein than they need. Even athletes in training typically don't need to increase their protein intake because the additional foods they eat to meet their high calorie energy needs deliver the protein as well. In the U.S., food for most is abundance, and there's a heavy emphasis on meat in our culture. So it's fairly easy to get the amount of protein we need. Example, 1 ounce of meat or a half cup of legumes, beans, equals about 7 grams of protein. So if you eat a piece of meat the size of a deck of cards, that is 3 ounces or 21 grams. Or if you eat an 8-ounce piece of meat, a lot of steaks and stuff come as 8 ounces or 12, but 8 ounces of meat equals about 56 grams of protein. And remember, a few slides back, we said the RDA for a person that's 150 pounds was around 54 grams of protein or so. So that's more than what, that one 8-ounce piece of meat is more than what that one person would necessarily need for the whole day. If we're looking at the new MyPlate guide, based on a 2,000 calorie diet, we're looking at all of the food groups and getting our servings of each of the food groups. We're getting protein from a lot of those different categories. 6 ounces of grains or 6 servings of grains a day gives us about 18 grams of protein. If we're eating about 2.5 cups of veggies, that's going to give us 10 grams. 3 cups of milk is about 24 grams. 5.5 ounces of meat is 38 grams. So if we add, just following the MyPlate and the different servings of food groups, that gets us to about 90 grams of protein. So that is also more than the RDA for most people, and most people in the U.S. consume more than this, especially in that meat area. So I always like to recommend to people food first to meet your protein needs. We get it from the different food groups. It's abundant in all sorts of foods. Over there we see nuts and seeds and grains and eggs and vegetables and all those different things. So as long as there's adequate food intake, most people get more than adequate protein intake. Protein moderation as well as fat moderation is encouraged. And so protein supplements are pretty unnecessary for healthy adults if you're eating a good balanced diet with the different food groups. Nature does it best, as in getting all nutrients, simple, fresh, whole foods are the best option, promoting health and giving you more energy and all of the natural nutrients that you need. So food first to meet protein needs, and then go from there if you need to. So that wraps up Chapter 6 and protein for us, and we'll be moving on to Chapter 7 and metabolism next.